Hi, BookTube. I just looked on the BookTube thing, and it's been 24 hours since I made a video, and I thought what I would do is I would just sit here in the sunroom where I've been sitting, and I was reading. What was I reading? Now I can't remember what I was reading. I think the last thing I read, I was reading the Decameron, because this morning I read a lot about, I mentioned this novel, I got it at a thrift store recently, about Schmidt by Louis Begley. And I already had another novel by him in our library, Mister's Exit. And so when I saw this, I think I got this at the Humane Society's bookstore, thrift store. So I've been reading it pretty steadily. I'm halfway through it. I looked this up, and he wrote this novel after he wrote this, and then he wrote another Schmidt novel after this one. He wrote a trilogy about Schmidt. I can't remember the titles of them. I looked them up on Amazon, so I don't know if I'll read them. But that's what I've been reading. So yeah, so I was reading this morning, and then I got the Decameron. This morning I was looking at BookTube, and Adam on Mitamore, he did a video on this. He said he was on the 10th of September, and I watched it, and he's up to book 3. I just got to day 3. I'm on day 3, story 1. And I listened this morning to Adam's summary of, I think he did almost 300 pages. And one thing he did say in that video that kind of, he said, don't look at reading this as a homework assignment. And I've been trying to read it every day, kind of obsessed with it, trying to read it, trying to stay up. But then I noticed that in BookTube world, that there's not many videos of people really talking about their reflections on this. And as I've been looking at this Decameron by Boccolino, I can't pronounce his name. I told my wife this morning it'd take a whole semester to really talk about this book. So I was really kind of surprised how easily Adam was able to do it, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't summarize in 6 or 8 minutes 300 texts of this book. I'd have to, I could write a massive term papers, like if I was going to college. I mean, there's so much that you could approach this text. And so I don't know. I'm not really enjoying reading it. It's not something it's kind of like I have been looking at it as a homework assignment. I find it kind of boring, to be honest. It's not what I expected. It's easy to read. That's one thing I can say. The translation here by Wayne A. Rebhorn isn't easy to read, and I've checked other translations, and there's not much difference from other translations from this one, except maybe it's more Americanized this translation. It's more for the general public, you might say. But I am going to read it until the end of September. I don't know how far I'll get, but I am glad that I finally got into it. I know what it's about. I've done lots of reading on the internet. I read the introductions, so I'm kind of, at least it's not a mystery to me anymore. It's not something I'm not familiar with, that I know what it's about, but I don't think I'm going to finish it. I'll read until the end of September, and then it's going to go back down to lower level. And I have been really enjoying reading about this novel, about Schmidt. It reminds me a lot of John Updike's novels, Saul Bellows, Philip Roth. It's about a man in his 60s who's lost his wife to cancer. He has a daughter named Charlotte who's in her 30s, highly educated, works for some kind of something in New York City, who's engaged to get married to a lawyer that was Schmidt was like a partner in some law firm in New York City, became very well off. He's highly educated, he's very smart, educated. He's in his 60s, and he's a womanizer, smokes cigars, and likes good bourbon, and his wife passed away, and he doesn't know what he's going to do next. He's kind of like in the next stage of his life. What's he going to do? And he strikes up a relationship with this waitress in town. He lives in the Hamptons, and he strikes up this relationship with this Puerto Rican waitress who's like 27 years old, and he's 60, and I think in the end they kind of shack up together. So I was reading that, and I was going to read this afternoon, some more of Isaiah Berlin, A Life. I'm up to 1942 to 45. He was working for the British government during the war, kind of like he was in Washington, D.C. and New York City. Basically, he was to give reports to the British government of the U.S. government, and drumming up support for the war, U.S. support for the war. Of course, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and Germany declared war, America entered into the Second World War. But it's interesting. And I'm still reading the Book of Disquiet. I read this at night. It's the kind of thing I read to go to sleep. It's not really hitting me like the first time I read it, but I'm going to read it until I get bored with it. I am thinking about reading this other novel by Begley after I finish about Schmidt. It's not really, see, it's very thin. It's only, 205 pages. So I don't know. So that's what's going on here. This is a Sunday. I'm sitting in the sunroom on a Sunday afternoon. I'm kind of out of it. It's like I just don't know. There's too much going on in the world. The West Coast is on fire. Hurricanes, earthquakes in Mexico. Just all this shit going on in the world. It's like it's hard to put it all aside and just go. Everything's hunky dory. Like let's go fry some hamburgers, and it's like playing the fiddle as Rome is burning. It's like what? It's kind of like that photo you see on the internet. People playing golf, and in the way off in the distance, there's a major forest fire going on, destroying thousands of acres of land. Houses are being burned. Animals are being displaced, and hey, I'm gonna go out and play a game of golf. It's kind of absurd. It's like here I am sitting here in this sunroom, and there's billions of people who are displaced, homeless, hungry, people losing everything in hurricanes and floods and earthquakes and fires. And I'm sitting here drinking a cup of coffee, talking about books. You know, it's kind of like that Decameron, which kind of reminds me. There's a black in the book. It opens up with Boccaccio talking about the Black Plague. And then these people decide to go off into the countryside and to tell stories, you know, drink good wine and eat, drink, and have feast and dance and live in this kind of Eden. And right outside the walls of Eden is people are dying by the millions from the Black Plague. It's the same thing. Here I am sitting in the sunroom, sitting in my little Garden of Eden, and out there in the world, the Black Plague is going on. You know, it's absurd. Millions of people are in slavery. Millions of people are starving, dying, being burned up by fire. Earthquake, buildings falling on top of them. Their homes being washed away, destroyed by hurricanes. And I'm sitting here, you know, telling a story, drinking a good cup of coffee, you know. The Black Plague is raging outside. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? So that's why I'm reading the book of Disquiet still, Fernando, Pessoa, and reading the life of Isaiah Berlin, about Schmidt by Louis Begley, and crawling my way through the Decameron. And I did put away my diary for the day. I haven't been mentioning it, but I ended today on September the 10th, 2017. I ended on page 830. Tomorrow is September the 11th, which will be a Monday. And my wife's not sure now if she's going to go on her getaway. She usually in September she goes away for about 4 or 5 days with old girlfriends in nursing school. But one of the old girlfriends, her dog, she found out last week has cancer. And she doesn't want to leave the dog alone, to die alone. She's attached to this dog, and so it might be canceled. My wife might just stay here for 6 days at home with me. So I'm hoping you're having a good Sunday. It's a new week. I hope your week is a good week. And until next time, bye.